Our next step is to add end papers, which is going to beautify the book as well as allow us to attach the text block to its case. And so I have these beautiful end papers here that we're going to add onto this text block here. So a little trick is to grab some scratch paper and give yourself about a ½ inch, maybe a little less, of exposed paper. And this will make sure that your end papers aren't encroaching too far down onto your title sheet. And just paint that glue on there. Get behind those tapes. A little messy on that tape there. Don't take too long, or else that scratch paper will end up on your title page. And then just rest that end paper snug up against the side. Press it down. And I was always dubious and doubtful about, the strength of only that less than ½ inch of glue affixing my end paper to the rest of my text block, but you'd be surprised. So then when you open up that book, it's beautifully associated with the rest of the text block. Let's do the other side. Clean off that. Grab a clean side of that scratch paper. Let's see. That's about as much exposed paper as we want. And then just again paint it on. I'm using PVA glue here that's included with the kit. Get behind that tape. Get behind the tape. There we go. Just rest that end paper up against the side. Now, if you're using any kind of patterned end paper, you're going to want to make sure it's right side up. These are just beautiful swirls that look good both ways. So press that down. You can let it rest under a book. That's going to attach just fine. Now we are going to glue up this spine and make sure these signatures are not only sewn together, but also have some glue that's helping add some structure and keeping them from getting separated. So one thing that you'll notice is that there is a bit of give here with my signatures. I can still squeeze them together. And so that's actually what I'm going to take care of with a little bit of pressure as I'm gluing. And that way when I glue, they won't expand back out like that. And the way that you can do that is with the press. A lot of people have fancy presses, and that's what those are for. But I just have a big, heavy book. There you go. And that smushes it down nicely. I'm also going to put a bit of scratch paper underneath there. Protect my work surface. It's fine. It doesn't have to be absolutely smushed as flat as it can be. You wouldn't want that anyway. And then we're just going to paint it on. And then remember, we left these little pieces floating free, and you see they lay down nicely as soon as you start to put the glue on them. And what I'm going to do is actually do a couple coats, so you don't need to worry about making sure there's glue in every nook and cranny. You're going to get that on the second pass if you miss anything. I'm going over the tapes. That's part of securing those tapes to the text block, is painting that paint right in and through that material. Securing that thread onto those tapes and the tapes onto the text block. And I'm getting a little bit on my scratch paper, I can tell. And that's going to be a problem if I don't do anything about it, but I'm going to. And this is easier to do with the text block standing up if you have one of those presses. But I'm trying to show a technique that doesn't require one of those. And when I mentioned making sure this doesn't stick to that scratch paper below, the solution is very simple. You simply move that scratch paper. So we're going to get a clean side there, and then let that dry. And then we'll do another coat. Do that 1 or 2 times until you see glue instead of gaps in between those signatures. This next step is actually one of my favorites. It's a lot like if you've ever had a cast put on, a fiberglass cast. This reminds me very much of that. And so this is called mull, and we're going to just put that over here, and that's going to add a lot of structure to this base. And my favorite part is that I actually like to use my finger instead of the paintbrush. Now I think you can use the paintbrush, but using the finger just feels a little bit more satisfying, and also helps you kind of force that glue through that mesh so that it gets all the way onto your text block and onto the end of the signatures beneath there. You can kind of see how I'm just using my finger to force that glue through. Oops. Got a little bit of a glue on there. And honestly, this part, this outside paper here of the end paper, is going to get glued to the case. So if anything happens to it, it's not the end of the world. I'm gluing all the way up to the edges, so not just in the center here, but I want to also make sure that this mull is firmly attached to the sides of the text block. And so I kind of like to do a number of runs down those, a little bit over the lip, so to speak, of that text block. And it's coming off here, so I'm going to just wet it down with that glue. Get it all the way laying down flat against that text block. And these little wings that are extending over, you're going to want those, leave those there, don't trim them. They're going to get tucked into the case underneath and really kind of form that strength between the text block, and the wings hold on to the actual case that opens and closes. And so it's these wings that are really giving a lot of that structure to the book. And again, push it down through there. Make sure that the material is fully attached to the text block. text block attached to the mull attached to the case. That means the text block is attached to your case. See, I've got a little bit here. Just gonna make sure I'm on that lip all the way across this edge. That's gonna make sure my case doesn't rip off. And then I'm gonna let this dry, and we'll move on to the next step.